On behalf of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, welcome back to our webinar series, Exploring Prescribed Fire for Forest Management. Before we begin today, we acknowledge that the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point occupies the land of the Ho-Chunk and the Menominee people. Please take a moment to honor the ancestral Ho-Chunk and Menominee land and the sacred land of all Indigenous peoples. My name is Hannah Spall. I am the Director of Land Management with the Nature Conservancy in Wisconsin, and it is my privilege today to serve as the moderator for today's webinar. Our invited speakers will discuss today's strategies to build, expand, sustain the workforce necessary to achieve fire management goals at scale across the region. We certainly do not expect our speakers or anyone to have definitive answers about what the future will look like, but rather we hope that the series and today's conversation will provide insights, pose questions, and stimulate our collective thinking. Today, we will be exploring the prescribed fire workforce development. Before I introduce our guests, we do have a few quick housekeeping items to review. The session recordings, any resources mentioned today, links for evaluations, and information about the continuing education will all be available on the website. And we're happy to say that we no longer require registration to participate in these series, and we will do our best to ensure that the recordings are posted within 2 weeks of today's sessions. To receive continuing education, you must complete the Microsoft form provided to you during the session. This link will be posted periodically throughout today in the chat feature. And if you are watching a recorded session, you will need to record your attendance using a different link that will be provided on the website. And if you have any questions, you can email wfc@uwstevenspoint.edu, and that information will also be put in the chat. The series is hosted by the Wisconsin Forestry Center at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Department of Forestry. And an evaluation link will be provided later this morning, and we really hope and invite that you will provide feedback so that we can continue to improve our series. And we'd just like to share that although you're attending virtually, we still really want to hear from you. So please type any questions or comments into the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please type any comments into the chat function of the Zoom. The chat feature may not be monitored for questions, but our technical host is monitoring for content, and we will do our best to address all questions and comments, but we may be limited by time. Before we begin today, we've already done some hellos, so thanks for noting where you're all coming in from. And then last but not least, we would like to appreciate our sponsors for making this opportunity free for all attendees. And today we would like to highlight our sponsors, the series Platinum sponsor, the National Wild Turkey Federation, and the series Gold sponsors, the Rufted Grouse Society and the American Woodcock Society and the Nature Conservancy. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. We'd like to welcome Curtis Wayka. Curtis is the Prescribed Fire Fuel Specialist with the Menominee Tribal Enterprises. Curtis was born and raised on the Menominee Reservation and is an enrolled member of the Menominee Tribe. He has served as the Fuel Specialist for the Menominee Tribal Enterprises since 2016. Before serving as the Fuel Specialist, he has worked in different positions with the Fuels and Fire program for more than 18 years. Curtis, welcome today.
Thank you.
And if you want to share your screen, I'll make sure what we're seeing is what you want us to see.
So I'm gonna touch on a little bit of the growth of our program and a bit of how we got there. Our program is 100% funded by the Bureau of Indian Affairs through a cooperative agreement. And then I'll just go right into it. So in 2016, when I accepted the fuels job, we had one position in the fuels program, and then today we have 18 of us. 2 technicians, 2 equipment operators, and then filled in with staff underneath each technician. So when we started, it was the one of the main things that we had to get the buy-in was we had to create the expectations for everybody, basically lining out the day. It's difficult to get people on board without having everything ironed out and basically on paper for us. So we these these expectations have been built in just to as reminders of what we need to do throughout the day. And um, the fun parts was the funding. So obviously you can see the funding growth from 16. We had $42,000 of funding in 16. We didn't have a lot of equipment. We didn't have the hiring pool. We didn't have and a lot of that, to create a lot of that, you need money. We didn't have the money. So it was a hard part the hard part was getting the proposals done and proposing funding from the BIA, but at the same time showing that we could do the work. So what we had to do is we had to get creative with a local program here that had paid for minimum wage of our employees. And then we had supplemented the the remaining salary of each employee with what funding we had, showing, I mean, basically putting out some of the work that we could do, and showing the BIA that had we had funding, we could do this regularly. Um, so you'll notice the growth in the graph here. Started at 42,000 and then close to 2.5 million as of 24. So a little bit of breakdown like of this is the BIL crew. We have a 5-person BIL funded module. We have a 10-person programmatically funded module. My position salary of the as the fuel specialist, 2 heavy equipment operators, our project funding, our skid steer maintenance, our skid steer fuel, our equipment maintenance, the purchase of a new slip-on for one of our that created one of our Type 7 trucks, which is what we use for the burning here because the Type 6s are a little too bulky for getting into our forest. And then we have the IDC funding also, and a new part of our program this year is hazard fuel reduction contractor work. And that contractor work is basically we earlier this year we started looking at trying to build a contracting force that we basically put out an RFP, and the contractors would submit a proposal, and they from there we would have them do some of the fuels reduction that we aren't our crew isn't able to keep up with. So that was a new wrinkle for us this year. It was $485,000 that we had gotten from the BIA to do more work than what we're capable of with just the staff we have. So now you can look at some of the acreage growth since 2016. You see 2015, we had 1 burn for 110 acres. Mechanical work was pretty much non-existent here. And then also if seeing you can see the growth. If you remember the first graph of the funding, you can see the funding growth along with the acreage growth. So it ties together. The more acreage we were putting out, the easier it was for us to get some of the funding. You see 2020 sitting in there with no burns, no acreage. That's COVID. So COVID, we were limited on what we could do. We did no burning whatsoever that year, just because of the smoke. And I think that was pretty standard nationwide at that time, not knowing what it was. But you could see in 2024, the added HFR contractor work on the end of 250 acres. So now we have three different phases or three different um, work types that we are doing. We do the burning. We also the mechanical fuels work, which our fuels crew does. And then we also now we are doing the contractor work, which has added another wrinkle to our program and a lot more work in our forest. So if you look at that, that's over this year with our crew and with the contractor, that's over 1,000 acres of treated forest land behind the um, logging operations that are here and just basically choosing where we work with where our communities are. So along with our funded building our funding and building our workforce, we also recognized the need that I mean, we could hire all the people we wanted, we could get all the money we wanted, but without equipment, um, we weren't able to really. So then it changed our thought process a little bit of then we started going after equipment. So since 2018, we have gotten just under $1 million of funding from the BIA to bolster our equipment and making our prescribed burns or mechanical fuel stuff more efficient and a lot safer for our guys on the ground doing the work and doing the fuels work. Um, but with that equipment, then comes additional costs. Then we're looking at basic one machine for us to run one machine was about $35,000, and that's not including um, operator wages or fuel or transport, nothing. That's just basic hydraulic hoses, mulching teeth, um, fuel, filters, DEF, routine service. So just the basic for us to run our machines for 36 weeks was roughly about 35,000, which is where we built in the maintenance and fuels funding to help support on the logistics side of everything, making sure we were fully equipped to complete the work that the BIA was funding us for. So some of the when we built this thing, it was mostly trying to figure out where we were doing everything. So the fuels management framework values at risk. Um, I mean, obviously we have our Legend Lake area and our Kashina area and our South Branch area that butts up to the National Forest to the northeast corner of our reservation. Um, then also comes the risk assessment, where identifying the likelihood and impacts and where's the best use of our money at. And then we go into what activities do we do to mitigate that risk. Um, Collaboration and leveraging was basically that was started it with the BIA. You help us with this much money, and we can give you this much acreage, this much work, and um, we'll hire this many people. I mean, that's what it's about really is hiring, building a program to be able to support the community, but also supporting local families, tribal and non-tribal. We employ non-tribal members and we have tribal members. We also have the diversity of men and women on our fields crew, which is it helps support and get the message out to others that it's not just a male dominated field. Um, so for us, the high fire frequency, obviously you can see the Legend Lake area. If you're not familiar with the reservation, the southeast corner of the reservation is our Legend Lake area. Our highest concentration of wui, the all around the lake, and then the fuels outside of that area is sandy areas with pine and oak. So a lot of it readily able to burn if under the right conditions. So a lot of our work is concentrated around the high fire frequency areas of Legend Lake, to the northeast of South Branch, and the Kashina area, which is the bright orange area to the west of Legend Lake, and then also the Middle Village. So this is a little bit of the work that our staff has been doing. So this is a compartment 112 HFR area, the before and after. Basically, this so the before picture was the stand was logged, um, and all the tops and slash was left in. So the goal for us was to clean that up and give it a chance for, or should we get a fire in some of these pine, um, making it a safer approach for our suppression staff to get in and actually engage a fire that is um, more than likely going to stay on the surface, not getting into the crowns, not something where we're exposing our workers to more hazard than they should have to deal with. Um, Same thing, another project area, 112, before and the after. The pictures don't really show, but our fields crew does amazing work as far as following and getting the work done that is expected of us, for the funding we get. The fields pro our accountability, completion of the treatment effectiveness monitoring, which is the photo monitoring that you just seen. That all gets linked to the BIA directly through an AGOL account. So as we're working, they're seeing the work that is being done. Completion of our accomplished hazard fuels treatment polygons, so they get the polygon reporting for acreage claim. Um, Submission of prioritized program of work and spend plan, and identification of all your planned projects, 3 years program of work and IFPORs, which is now IFPARs for us. Um, and then management of our fuels funds within policy and guidelines. Some of the benefits was job creation and employment opportunities. That was probably the hardest part of getting our program off the ground, is just because the red card qualification that we need for the burning. There's just not a lot of, I mean, people with red cards don't just walk into the place off the street and look for a job. So we had to get creative. We had to hire people, and then put them through the program or through the trainings, and from there we would offer them jobs as jobs opened up. Um, it was, I mean, it was a unique way to get employees, but it was one of the only ways we could pull that off, just because we didn't have the hiring pool here. We didn't have the interest. We didn't have a huge fields program prior to all of this. So there was like, it was not a widely known program here. And then also our program is a resource for the region. We also go out and we'll help the region prescribe burn. We help the region, the Midwest, the BIA region, I'm talking, burning. We will help them with fire suppression needs, staffing if there's long-term severity or whatever may happen within the region. We can move pieces around to help assist the region. So it's kind of a win-win for both the region and for the tribe here. The region gets a lot of bodies that could be available if needed, to help support other tribes in the region and other communities. And then also the tribe gets the amazing work that our crew does, helping with the forest health aspect of our forest, helping with the burning aspect of our forest, and also with the suppression aspect. We also we also do help assist our neighbors to the north, the Schwamigan National Forest. We have sent guys up to help them pull off some burns that are within driving distance of our reservation, just up to the north of us, multiple times. Um, the forest health part, it's a lot of a big number of our burns have come from our forest health department, which deal with we have the beech scale here now. We have the emerald ash borer here now. So a lot of what we do in the understory burning is we're trying to eliminate or reduce the beech and the ash saplings, and trying to promote more of the oak, maple. I mean anything that we that we can we know isn't going to die here on us in the next however many years. Just trying to manage for the future. Um, Another one of the benefits here is our established fuels crew for fire. Back in 2016, like I said, there was one position here. We had to mix and match forestry staff, suppression staff when they were available, and then we would bring in outside resources from the BIA to come down and help us pull off our burns. Back in 2022, we did a burn that was 467 acres, um, with 100% all Menominee employed um, staff, which would have never been an option for us um, in the past prior to that. We just didn't have the quals here. We didn't have the bodies, and we didn't have the equipment, and we didn't have the funding to do all of that. Um, and then ability to train and retain people. So we send our guys off to training. A lot of the funding that we get, the programmatic funding, the BIL funding, it also comes with 15% position support funding for each employee. Each employee's we send our guys to Colorado Fire Academy, to New York Fire Academy, any other Tennessee Fire Academy, any other trainings that we can um, look to advance our own people, while at the same time giving them the raises and everything that they're deserved for the work they do. Which was another huge hurdle for us, was separating our fields program from the tribal enterprises pay scale, and getting our program on the way GS scale, which is what we currently are on, and so a lot of the help, the BIAs, like they were the huge big brother for us, helping us mold what we have now. The other thing one of the other benefits that was huge here was the emergency response. So our crew is also helps with um, the tornado cleanup, opening roads during windstorms to to help get to communities that are blocked off or whatever, trying just to gain access for other emergency resources should there be need for them. Our crew has taken part in missing person searches. Um, and so any real emergency response that the tribe has, they can reach out to the forest manager, and then our crew is our crew's funding is, I mean, we are allowed to participate and help in an emergency event. Um, Challenges. So some of the challenges to growing our program was the scope of work. Following scope of work. I mean, a lot of times it's looked at like, oh, fuels has a lot of money. Fuels can do this. Fuels has a lot of bodies. Fuels can do this. Well, our scope of work with our funding is, I mean, we have a certain set of objectives that we have to complete for our funding. It's trying to keep the balance of this is what our funding allows us to do, and just trying to let people know at the beginning that our funding isn't, we can't do this or we can't do that. Um, our funding is, we need to do the HFR work. Um, we are paid to do our burning. We are paid to do our suppression needs if we're needed to help in suppression. And so all of the new parts of having a newer program that had a lot of fast growth, um, we had a lot of questions that we had to just basically tell them, I mean, that's not what our funding is for, basically. So then it came into the company and leadership buy-in. Leadership buy-in at the time was, at when I accepted the job, was not the greatest. We had it was just very new. Fire is bad for trees. Fire is bad for, fire kills everything. And just trying to give us a chance to see what we can do, and let us use fire as a tool. To me, I think fire is probably one of the most amazing tools that we have for forest health and forest regeneration. And now we have the buy-in with the current leadership that is here now, is where they give us a chance to do a lot more burning, a lot more of the mechanical work in areas that we were really off limits for us in the past. We were not given a lot of opportunity. But and then the other challenge, one of the biggest challenge, was doing more work with very little money. We had to get creative to basically show that, given the opportunity and given, that the funding, that we could do the work, and we could sustain the work, and then therefore creating the jobs for community members, and doing the work for the tribe and for the forest. Um, Number of employees, recruitment. Like I said earlier, we had none. We had no employees. We had no recruitment pool. We had to get creative where we would do the temp hires. We would hire seasonal employees for the summer months that would help our fields crew doing the work we do, at a reduced cost, because another program was picking up some of the costs for us, therefore allowing us to get more people for less money on our side, which was a huge impact, had a huge impact on the growth of our forest, because it helped give us the acreage that we needed to show that we could actually do it if we were funded. One of the one of the newer issues here is the lack of building space now because of the amount of equipment we had brought in. So we are at the current forestry center. We have a lot of our stuff, our trucks are here and everything, but a lot of our equipment we store off reservation in storage. We pay for storage places so that we can keep our equipment indoors, prolonging the use of them and limiting weather wear, and just keeping them to be safe, efficient equipment for us going forward. And then the funding leg, the federal funding for us. I mean, obviously the year starts October 1st is the fiscal year for us. Um, Funding actually doesn't come down to the tribe through a cooperative agreement until about June. So the initial building of the program was it was a little harder, but so what we had to do was to pinch pennies a bit, so to speak, and get our funding so that it was staggered a bit, so that we could um, have that bridge that gap from October to June without having to put a burden on the tribe or Menominee Tribal Enterprises. Um, just guarantee that our funding was our staff salaries and everything was covered. I mean, for us to pay the two fields modules, the 5-person and 10-person module, that's that's right around $1 million, just over $1 million of salary to to have them 15 people employed. So that's a huge burden had we not been able to work out and get our funding to stagger a bit. And it took a while for us to get there, but I mean, to this day, right now, we are not at all a burden on anybody. It is 100% funded. The money is there. Positions are safe. Um, and I'm a little bit early, but that pretty much wraps up what I had here.
That's wonderful, Curtis. Thank you. It always strikes me that like the programs that you're sharing, they resonate a lot of the challenges and the opportunities that we experience in our programs. And I think there's a high degree of overlap for a number of our listeners as well. So I think you're sharing a lot of common themes. Thank you. So our Q&A session is open. We have about 10 minutes or about 5 minutes or so before we move on to our next presenter. So I will invite that if anybody has any questions to just pop them up in the Q&A chat box. We do have one first question in for you, Curtis, and the attendee is asking, do you know of any equivalent training and crews off a similar model that are based with tribes in Canada? And I think we could broaden that question to just, are there other models and crews that you sort of modeled off with other tribes, or are there similar models elsewhere in Canada or the United States?
Uh, to be honest, it was I didn't have an idea. I'll be honest with you. It was putting together different ideas with the BIA, the region. I did do some Googling and came up with a tribe out of Montana, um, the Salish Kootenai, who has a huge fields program. Um, and so then I was looking at how they were modeled and how their org chart was built. And so, I mean, if I had to say anything, that would be where the ideas came from. But ultimately, it was the conversations back and forth between the Midwest Regional BIA office that helped steer the ship to where we're at now. I don't have any idea about anything in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How do you handle seasonality of the work? And a subsequent question is, what do your crew do during the slower seasons?
Well, so our season is it's our that's the unique part about our job is it's broken up. So we have normally from first week of March, we transition to prescribed burning in our fire season here at Menominee. So we that that time from there until probably about June 1st when we have green up is specifically we are burning or we are helping with suppression. After June, we will transition into more of going into our project work. And then, but at the same time, staff are available to go out west to help on western fires, on severity details to help other tribes, until usually that starts slowing down right about now, October, November. And then it's just 100% project work, until till March. And then it starts all over again.
The never-ending cycle.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Curtis. You shared a little bit about how your crew and tribe is offering resources shared to BIA in the region and to the Chequamegon Nicolet. If I were to reverse that question and ask of you, what do you need from partners to achieve the management goals that you have on tribal lands? What do you look to partners for, either currently, or if you had a magic paintbrush and you could ask for anything from partners, what would you request and ask for?
I mean, the biggest need we have here, the goal, one of our goals here is to, at some point, be able to do multiple burns, on the same day. Just because we are pretty much at the limit with what we can do in one operational period with the crew and the equipment we have. So it would be like some extra leadership, extra bodies, extra equipment. I mean, that would be really, I mean, I know the Forest Service has come down and helped us burn a few times, and likewise, like we go back up and help them too when they have a need. Um, it's just, and I mean, the hard part though for us is our fire season is the same time as everybody else's fire season. Our burn windows are the same as everybody else's burn windows. So we are all have the same goals. It's just hard to mix and match and make pieces available when we all are playing with the same weather patterns and trying to achieve the same goals.
Yeah, yeah. Curtis, I had a follow-up question. Somebody was asking if you could describe a little bit more about what you mean by project work. I think that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So what does that mean for you?
Okay, so the project work is pretty much consists of it's the thinning and hand piling, and our mechanical work. So going in and behind some of our log jobs, all the tops are left in. So then our fuels crew goes in and thins it out, cleans it up, and um, piles so that it can all be masticated. Basically, we used to do in the past, we did biomass where they would come in and chip it all and load it all into trucks and then haul everything away. This way here, we're cutting it all, piling it all, and we are masticating it right on the forest floor and leaving it all there. None of that break nutrients, none of that. What can help the soils is being taken off of our forest. It's lays right there, and hopefully is the benefit to our forest in the long run.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. One final question before we switch over to our next presenter. It's an easy question, but what is this lovely picture that we're looking at? Where is this? What is that?
So that is a one of our Wooey burns
Okay.
in Middle Village area. Um, so we're just basically burning off the grasses in early spring. Um, just basically so that we don't have to do an emergency response to a
Mm,
fire basically in the
yeah,
area.
wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, Curtis, for the presentation and fielding our questions. I'll ask you to hold the screen share, and then I'm going to introduce Caleb as soon as he has his first slide up. Yeah, so welcome, Caleb Schreiber. Caleb is the Cooperative Fire Specialist with the U.S. Forest Service. Caleb sits on the executive committee for the Great Lakes Forest Fire Compact and the Big Rivers Forest Fire Compact as part of his job with the U.S. Forest Service Eastern Region State, Private, and Tribal Forestry Fire and Aviation Management Program. He has held fire management positions throughout the United States. And Caleb, with that, I will hand it off to you. Welcome, and we're excited to hear what you have to share today.
Right on. Well, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, Caleb Schreiber with the Forest Service, and I think you'll see there's a lot of crossover with the experiences that Curtis shared as we go through this, but also some different perspectives. So just a little bit more background on myself. It's Caleb Schreiber, and current qualifications. I'm an RXB1 trainee. I've been an RXB2 for close to a decade. Also, have some suppression qualifications. My background, in addition to being a cooperative fire specialist, working primarily in the state, private, and tribal areas, I did work for a long time in the National Forest System. I was a zone FMO, and a lot of my presentation will show some of my experience there in Bozeman, Montana, with the Custer Gallatin National Forest. I was a field specialist there as well. I have temp promo as a staff officer, fire staff officer, which is for the Superior National Forest, as well as a field specialist on the Idaho Panhandle in Idaho. And I started out my career actually in, school as far as Vermilion Community College in Ely, Minnesota. I'm from Wisconsin. I got my BS from UWSP, and then worked in various suppression positions throughout the U.S., primarily for the Forest Service. So what is workforce development in the Forest Service? It is an extremely broad topic. So I tried to just kind of hit a few of my what I feel like encompasses the broad topic. Workforce development includes our workforce planning, which is budgets and needs assessments, organizational structures. It's huge into recruitment and retention. Some of the ways we do that: flexible work environments, relocation recruitment incentives, other types of practices for helping recruit and retain folks. Training and development is a huge part. We're largely bound by various policy and documents associated with that, and we'll share some of those. And then individual development plans, some other less formalized training and development options really help build that workforce. Additional things, come from our lessons learned, history that we had, various legislation. All these things have effects, local factors, costs of living, pay, burnout, cultural issues, all of that stuff is an impact on our workforce development. So training and policy requirements is kind of specific background, I think, a good place to start from our perspective. And how really do you even get to be a burn boss within our agency? So we have a number of guidance documents that kind of outline that, and it's all rooted back into that kind of history, lessons learned, policy type of stuff. So the PMS 310-1, which is the National Wildland Fire Coordinating Group Standards for Wildfire Position Qualifications. This is the base, and that is shared amongst a wide variety of agencies, federal and non-federal, but it really gears amongst many of those agencies towards national mobilization. So they may have qualifications at a local level that are not as stringent as the 310-1. Within the Forest Service, we adopt 310-1 as policy, and then we add to it with the Federal Wildland Fire Qualification Supplement and the Forest Service Fire and Aviation Qualifications Guide. And so our current pathways to becoming a burn boss, and we have 3 levels of burn boss in the Forest Service. The RXB3, which is exclusively housed in the federal supplement. And then there's RXB2 and 1, which are both in the 310-1. So to become an RXB3, you have to work through as a firefighter 2 and a firefighter 1 or an IC type 5. And I'll go through some of the training requirements and stuff, but this generally takes, I would say 5 to 7 years on average to gather both the training and the experience required to leave this RXB3 level. And that RXB3 level is really what we consider low complexity burning, things like pile burning when there's snow, or maybe small wildlife openings, again, surrounded by snow with minimal chance of escape and very small burn organizations. And then we go to RXB2, which requires firing boss and IC Type 4. And then the IC Type 4 itself also has additional requirements. And this is probably one of our biggest bottleneck points here, or choke points, as far as the IC Type 4. It requires a pretty in-depth suppression background. There's a lot of opportunity that comes into it as far as you need a specific type of fire to gain that experience. And so it's about being in the right place at the right time, and then still being the priority, if you will, for that opportunity. So with that, it takes, generally speaking, about 10 or more years to get to this RXB2 level. And then our most complicated prescribed fires are at this RXB1 level, and they tend to require basically redoing your experience at the RXB2, but at a higher level of complexity. And that complexity may be driven by the fire environment or by sociopolitical factors. And so additionally, there's additional training requirements for those, and I've kind of highlighted these. So everything in white is a 310-1 requirement. And everything in this light green is a Forest Service specific requirement. Everything in the light blue comes out of the federal supplement, so it's common to all of our federal partners. So in general, we have enough training to add approximately a year just into the training side of things into that RXB2 requirement. And again, this winds up being close to 18 individual courses. And, you know, if you're lucky in a program, you may get 3 trainings a year. So you're talking at least 6 years worth of training in addition to the experience. And then the compounding factors of how sequentially you must work through each of those qualifications. So it's a big deal to try and work through that process to try and build just the background organization that you need to conduct these types of prescribed burn programs. And then additionally, we have the Interagency Fire Program Management Standards. That was a joint effort between the various interior departments and the Forest Service. And then the Forest Service again went above and beyond, and we have our Forest Service specific fire program management standard. And here's an example of what that looks like for us, associated with specifically the fuels program at a zone or a district level. And so these are the different actual positions that may be held at one of those zones or districts, and then the requirements for qualifications associated with them. So just briefly kind of go through there. There's a district or zone fuel specialist position there. That is a 401 series position, for which that means they have to have that professional college degree background in addition to the experience requirements of an RXB2 and IC4 task force leader. So that's, 10 years worth of experience in addition to a bachelor's degree, essentially. And then district fuels specialist is a similar. Fuels AFMOs, similar for experience, but does not require the background, and they do have slightly different duties. And then additionally, the senior fuels technician, which is a relatively new position in the agency as far as the grade level goes, and they just come out with these IFPM standards, firing boss and IC Type 4. So again, you're looking at close to 10 years, maybe even to get to the IC4 level. Firing boss a little bit less, and district fuels technicians really kind of our entry level, and that's still at an IC5 or firefighter 1 position. So beyond that, all of those require a fair amount of suppression background and experience. So in addition, how do we get funding necessarily, or how do we get priorities to build organizations? And really, why are we burning or building this stuff out in the first place? And so to me, it boils down to, wildfire risk versus ecological benefit kind of drives where this funding and priorities wind up going within our agency. And so you'll see on the next slide that I have kind of how wildfire risk is laid out, but really what we have is kind of almost a west versus east approach here, in that Western US and is largely driven by this wildfire risk approach with threats to livelihood, infrastructure, property, where fire exclusion really leads to increased fire severity and different potential losses of ecosystem function due to that severity, and then those threats to livelihood and function. Ecological benefit really drives a lot of why we burn in the east, because fire exclusions leading to mesification, and we're losing our pyrolithic species and loss of habitat, threatened and endangered species, all of that in the east. We definitely still have wildfire risk areas and potential in the east, but you'll see it's a different picture. So wildfire hazard potential is a very popular way of measuring wildfire risk, and it's a little bit less or it's just one of many ways, but it is a very popular way right now of measuring it. And so you'll see here, northeast Minnesota in the eastern area has very high wildfire risk. The areas around New Jersey have very high wildland hazard potential, but a lot of the rest of it kind of falls somewhere in the middle or on the lower end. Whereas a lot of the west, you can see all of the red on there, really driving a lot of wildfire hazard and prescribed burning, and then as you'll see, kind of some of the funding that goes along with that. So wildfire crisis strategy is a big thing on the landscape right now, and this is impacting a lot of how funding and organizations are being developed. And so that has a goal of treating 50 million acres of that high-risk fire sheds. There's 21 identified priority landscapes, all within the Western US. $400 million in investment, 550 different communities targeted, 2,500 miles of high voltage power lines, 1,800 municipal water supplies. And again, all Western US. Collaborative wildfire risk reduction is another major program being leveraged right now, a $100 million investment, and it's specifically designed to be outside of those 21 initial landscapes. And then but still targets national forest system lands with a very high wildfire hazard potential or within the WUI. So there were several states that were available in the eastern area to receive that funding, and the Superior National Forest was one of those that was awarded 2 projects for $10 million. And then additionally, I think a big one, there was a specific multi-state project awarded for workforce capacity development with $2.1 million for that. And you'll see kind of how that all shakes out into where nationally we allocate these resources for workforce. Wildland fire capacity for 2024, and it's kind of spread out throughout the year. There's 193 million acres across the National Forest System. 12 million of those fall within the eastern region. That's about 6%. And we have about 3% of our overall staffing of around 11,300-ish firefighters. So a little bit different. Again, you can kind of see that based on risk, but we do an outsized amount of prescribed burning here. So we had about 95,000 acres year to date of prescribed fire in Region 9, and that amounts to about 8.6 of our Forest Service total 10-year average as of 2019. So again, a large outsized impact there. But you also see that there's some additional challenges, and if you look at this, the numbers do fluctuate seasonally. So this starts out in April, again, our main prescribed fire windows, and burning. Let's see, fire hazard starts kind of when the agency is just building capacity for the year. So we're competing with a lower number of resources available to get those acres done. So I think, how do you do this? I think you do it by leveraging what you have and being prepared to take advantages of opportunities. And I think you saw a lot of that coming out of Curtis' presentation as well. And so how do we do that? I think my experience is that the key there is setting a vision, goals, and objectives. And if you do that, you can kind of help provide focus and motivation for your program. It gives you a way to define where you're trying to get to, and it helps, I think, in these other two things. It helps you monitoring so that you can right size your monitoring efforts based on what your capacity is, and then utilize those monitoring efforts to increase your influence. And so I think increasing your influence is a big deal, and it's expands beyond just your organization. That influence needs to be leveraged across potential employees, anybody who will really listen to your story that you can recruit to your cause. So I think one of the biggest messages is that we need more to do more. I think you heard Curtis also mention about doing more with less, and we've done that for a long time. I think we both kind of hopped into this at about the right timing, and I think you'll see kind of how some of that works out. But we're starting to change that narrative that we need more to do more, and we're able to show that we can do a lot more, even if we're just given a little more. So this is an experience of mine from when I was a fuels FMO and an FMO, that we started out that program. I was the sole fuels employee, and the previous 5-year average when I started was about 400 acres of accomplishment. By the fall that I had taken that position, I added 2 positions to my organization as a seasonal basis, and we doubled our output. And so that was within the first couple of years of that program development. So you can see the specifics down there in the notes. That 3-year average was just the period from 2019 to 2021, and the 5-year average was from 2014 to 2018. But by showing those results, we put together some white papers and some ways to show our story and to communicate and to spread our influence. And we were able to gather a couple more positions. And so by 2022, we had 5 positions in our organizational structure specific to fuels. And so by that time, I had promoted to an FMO. And we again expanded our influence, and were able to continue to strive towards building that program. And we were prepared, and we were able to take advantage of some opportunities that came along through 2021 and on. So again, just kind of a recap, started out 2019 as a solo organization with a budget of $40,000. We were able to expand that budget throughout that first year to about $150,000, simply by showing that we could be ready and take advantage of funds that weren't being utilized elsewhere and need to be reallocated. And then by 2020, we were still kind of in that same mode, but building kind of that influence period and monitoring. 2021, we started throwing together grant proposals, and we increased our budget to about $400,000 and gained that approval to hire those 2 additional positions. And then it started to snowball. And so 2022, we received a Joint Chiefs Award, which gave us an additional $800,000 for that fiscal year, with a total funding commitment of over $3 million. And by 2023, they received again 2 $5 million projects awards, and have further expanded that program. So now they have approximately 8 full-time positions just in the fuels organization. They've increased their capacity, increased grade levels and things like that, to increase the specialization and compensation packages for some of that high-level experience. And yeah, they have additionally a 6 seasonal, so about a 14-person staff. And so you see that's on the left-hand side of this org chart. And then there's still the suppression staff on the right-hand side. And One thing I wanted to talk about is the kind of the burnout that happened in that suppression staff. At one point, we relied almost exclusively on suppression to build and to implement our fuels program as well. And with the increase of fire and the length of fire seasons, that type of stuff, we had a lot of burnout in that program. Really affected our capacity. We were fighting fires all the way throughout the year. We had fires into January, even in Montana. And it just really allowed for no kind of down periods or time off for folks. And then adding some of the prescribed fire and fuels work into there was just unsustainable. So this really bolstered the ability for that program to make accomplishments. So additional specific things that kind of worked for me that I found successful in developing that workforce was really building the team, anchoring into people that had passion and that I trusted. And one of the comments I have in there, build the team, started, 2-3 jobs previously. So before I was the fuels AFMO, I was the assistant base manager on the Gallatin Rappel crew there, also out of Bozeman. And a lot of the people that I recruited into my program as I started to build it came from previous positions that I held. One of my things I'm proudest of is I had 2 employees in the first ever National Fuels Academy, and I had 2 previous employees in that. So of like 12 people, I had 4. And that was from my constant advocating for the fuels program throughout my career, even while I was in primary suppression positions. And so know your team members, get to know them. It was amazing the strengths that we had in our program as far as what they could bring that were unique skills. I had, for example, a crew member who was had a master's in English and had several professional editing positions and things like that. If you want to build some amazing white papers and things like that, that guy really helped move that program forward and helped move a lot of that influence forward. So developing employees, I talked about the National Fuels Program, Fuels Academy. It is an investment. Even if you have to forego project accomplishment, and developing those employees is what helps keep things moving in the future. Empowering your team to make improvements, especially when it comes to process or systems. We were a fledgling program, so basically we were building from the ground up. We definitely looked to others for examples, but really trying to stay flexible was and allowing folks to look at those other programs themselves and bring that stuff forward really helped a ton. I think the other big thing I'm proud of is laying that foundation for the program to continue after you leave. And as I kind of showed, they are accomplishing much more than even when I was there, and it's really awesome to see. They are burning this week in the Bozeman Municipal Watershed, which, if you look into that, has decades worth of litigation associated with it, and it's a really big deal to be having that achievement there this year. Challenges and opportunities. So where did I stumble and where can we continue to improve? My challenges, I really feel like, that there were some of these challenges that were unique to that location and some that were not. Cost of living, quality of and availability of housing was a huge challenge. Particularly for the West Yellowstone duty location there, but also for the Bozeman duty location. West Yellowstone is a gateway community to Yellowstone National Park, and it's primarily federally owned property around it. There's very little opportunity for housing, and what's available is extremely expensive. And so filling positions in West Yellowstone was particularly challenging and required a lot of ingenuity and a lot of thinking outside the box and how to recruit those folks, and flexibility in working with them when they showed some interest. So mental health was one that I did not think ahead about at the time, and has since been a major concern of mine, but it sprung up on me in a hard way one year, especially while we were building that organization before we kind of had the capacity and the resiliency. And it was something that we started investing in, and I think it's paid dividends there as well. So things like stress first aid and the citizen program, and several peer support programs, incredibly important, I think, to maintaining these workforces. And fire suppression responsibilities and burnout, talked about a little bit. We had some really challenging years. We had the Bridger Foothills fire with some burnovers, many structures lost, long kind of duration incident. And it started at the end of in September, went on into October and November. We had several other late season fires. We tried to conduct a prescribed fire that same year, looking for a major win. And we actually had a wildfire adjacent to it, but our prescribed fire signs were out, and the public did not really, they didn't buy that it was a human caused fire, not by us. So there was a lot of extra challenges that kind of set us back associated with that, especially since the investigation took about a year to publish, publicly. So, and then that contributed, I believe, to some of the mental health challenges that some folks faced. Community perceptions were affected by that, but they existed prior to that as well, both with prescribed fire and smoke. One of the successes that we've had there is in building a community or a wildfire adapted program there, in conjunction with several fire departments and the state of Montana. Changing budgets and priorities are always a challenge. Currently experiencing that within our agency. Expenses of treatments and diminishing returns. So as we built that organization, you definitely notice that, it's not a linear process, and that the low-hanging fruit quickly goes away, and you become engaged in more and more expensive and laborious treatments in those high-risk areas. We had helicopter treatments that were thousands of dollars per acre, and extremely expensive treatments. And they were primarily targeted towards fuels reduction and watershed improvement. Loss of expertise to retirements, other agencies, inadequate succession planning, all of those are big challenges. For those familiar, we had a major growth in the organization in 2001 with the 2001 fire plan, and basically all of those folks are either have or already or are about to reach retirement age, and so they're leaving for retirements, and then additionally competing with other agencies in salaries and benefits and that type of stuff can be challenging depending on your location, etc. Bureaucracy and institutional inertia, I think, is a big challenge for any large organization, but definitely, there are stumbling blocks, whether it comes to hiring and our requirements or different, folks in different positions, that type of stuff. And institutions this large are slow to change and have trouble when they change quickly. So I think those things were challenges. Stigma associated with fuels program at the time in that particular location, there was a perception that people who got out of suppression positions and went into fuels positions was like retire in place early kind of a perception, because there was not a lot being accomplished at the time. And I think we've defeated that perception. Fleet and equipment acquisition. That again, I would say is a local issue, and again ties back to that kind of bureaucracy and institutional inertia. but fleet and equipment acquisition in that area was extremely difficult. Even if you had funding, there were caps on those pieces of equipment. And so there was a lot of push towards contracting those services and stuff rather than owning and operating. Infrastructure, the storage, office space, that type of stuff to help accommodate a growing organizations was a challenge. There, you can find funding for those other parts of it, but that part of it, as well as the time and expertise for those projects was challenging, and litigation was huge there. Almost every project, big or small, was litigated to the nth degree. Litigated, appealed, litigated again. So last I left, while it was out of all injunctions, that Bozeman Municipal Watershed Project was still in litigation. Opportunities. I think we have a ton of opportunities moving forward. There's a lot of momentum around this. A lot of the successes that I experienced were at least partly attributed to timing and this associated momentum, but also being prepared for it, I think. So awareness and support for behavioral health, and I specifically say behavioral health here rather than mental health, because there's awesome recognition moving forward that this is a whole body situation. You can't separate mental health from physical health. So, and some great new programs coming online and helping to support that. Definitely changes in culture around that. Community approach bases to housing challenges are expanding and being recognized, and a lot of that is helping alleviate some of those issues. So just working through some of those options. Increased focus on succession planning and understanding of barriers, trying to come up with new things like our CIMT process for managing large fires, as well as revising and looking at opportunities for other qualifications, such as perhaps removing the IC requirement from prescribed burn, or other, local organizations doing that anyways. So increasing opportunities for training in RX fuels and just the general funding behind that, I think all is a positive step forward. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I kind of put this together last minute, so it looks like I think I still kept on schedule here. But yeah, happy to take any questions. I have my contact information in there too, if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Really great information and great context. We are getting some great questions that are popping up in the chat, so I invite others to add additional questions, and I will summarize some of the sort of first question. There seems to be some interest in listening around sort of the general health and well-being and protecting health of our workforce. So a specific question that came up was very targeted to, are there concerns around the toxicity of gear, particularly personal protective equipment and Nomex, and any discussion around alternatives to that? And then I think just more generally, like, what do you, I guess just some examples of what is working for general overall well-being of health from our crew?
So I think the toxicity piece, I know that one I'm not as up to speed on. Other than that, I know that there's a lot of research showing how dangerous even, the exposure to wood ash and having dirty Nomex and all that sort of stuff can be to your long-term health. There's recognition now of presumptive care for various cancers and things like that within the Department of Labor. There is definitely recognition of the need to be better about cleaning our Nomex and using clean Nomex, providing opportunities for folks to do that. But that's probably about all I can really speak to on that. Let's see, the general health and well-being of our workforce. I think I definitely had some quick succession wake-up calls on that in my career. It was something we didn't talk about for a really long time. And then, it was something I, started considering more of, but it kind of slapped me in the face, I guess, with some challenges I had within my organization. And what we've done, what I did personally to move that forward, was have open, frank conversations about it with folks. First off, research the different resources available within your organization, and that's going to change from organization to organization. But at the time when I first faced this, it was pretty dismal. We didn't have a lot of resources, and the resources we had were not that great. They tend to defer care for folks that really needed emergency, acute, critical care. Basically, their option was to go to the emergency room. And beyond that, we just didn't support them very well. It would take a month to get them into to care otherwise. And it's better. We do more preventative care now. We have, like I said, stress first aid. We have a really great peer support program. We have dedicated positions. We're building an entire program at the Washington office level to address these issues. And so I think that's really some great steps forward. There's momentum in this issue. Additionally, other than just really breaking down those barriers and getting folks to start talking about it, I think having the stress first aid was a big one that we did. We sent people to train the trainer and that type of stuff just to get a little bit more background. But I just came back from the Glyphsy Compact in Canada and heard the topic there was mental health for that meeting, and heard about what some of the other agencies are doing. And Parks Canada is really, I think, has some great things that they're doing. They have a Resilient Minds program that is specific towards the wildland community. And it sounds really interesting and something that I would encourage folks look into more. I believe there's some online resources for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Caleb. That's a difficult question to field. Appreciate it. A next question. The question is, has the increase in wildfires helped, or has it helped or hindered funding for the Forest Service for prescribed fire programs? So I think the question is, can you help make some connections? What is the scene of suppression in the region and nationally? How is that impacting resources and workforce and accessibility to prescribed fire implementation?
It's really difficult to extricate the two from each other in our organization. They're highly dependent on each other, both in whether or not you're going to have resources available or whether or not you have windows or expertise to conduct those activities. I think overall it helps, as far as it helps draw attention to the issues. It helps to bring importance into it. It's a challenging line to walk, as far as like to say, are these large, expensive, and sometimes damaging fires a good thing? I wouldn't say they're a good thing, but I do think they draw attention to what we have going on and the need for treating these fire-dependent ecosystems. Whether or not they're competing, it just depends on the year, right? Like, we have big years and we have slower years, and so I think we seem to have more big years than slow years anymore. But I think in general it still helps build overall capacity.
Yeah.
But I think it's regional, and largely regional. So
thank you. Let's see. So I like this next question, and it's fielding from a representative from the University of Wisconsin in River Falls, and I think it really gets to the heart of some of our sort of building the foundations for the conversation today. So the question, we have a wildland fire training at the University of Wisconsin River Falls here. What is a reasonable / feasible training for undergraduates to obtain that will set them on the right path in this field? Is there anything beyond recommended the initial FFT to basic training? So yeah, I like that question. I think there's a lot of university and perspectives on the call, like what do undergraduates at this moment need to help you and the Forest Service achieve these missions?
Yeah, I think right, there's a component of experience tied with training, right? And so I tried to show kind of how that sets up in some of those previous slides, but if you get too far ahead of your skis, so to speak, on the training component compared to your experience, it diminishes the value of that training, at least in my opinion. So I do think there's an appropriate level. There's still value, even if you're out in front of your skis to a degree, in that training, in opening you up to perspectives and, other people's experiences and that type of stuff. I felt extremely fortunate in my undergrad experience and in my AAS experience at Vermilion, and my undergrad experience at UWSP there. I had a lot of opportunities for training, both in S courses as well as just, academic related fire background. And so I think there are other models to look at. So I think UWSP was a great model. I can give you examples of what I was able to get there through both the fire crew program that they had there, as well as academically. We had fire behavior classes, which I think you can go as far as you care to with the S classes in fire behavior. LTAN, that's our long-term analyst position, is still in very high demand, and it does not have a high experience threshold, but it does have a high training threshold. And that's hugely helpful both for prescribed fire, especially large landscape prescribed fire, as well as our Western wildfire needs. Let's see, beyond that, I had a M581 type course. That's our fire program management course. There at UWSP, we didn't receive a certificate for that course, but it still provided a great exposure to how the federal fire programs work, and especially at higher levels. That was extremely helpful in my career. I had opportunities there for, let's see, wildland fire in the urban interface, 131 course, several other classes, this 211. There were some basic chainsaw courses that were available between that and Vermilion. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, whether that's academic and, talking about the academic benefits of prescribed fire and the academic background around, thermodynamics and that type of stuff in actual fire behavior and modeling, as well as advanced fire behavior and fire behavior modeling, that type of stuff.
Great. Well, Caleb, I think that's probably a great question to sort of end it on. We can think of all the new early career professionals that will be entering the field through academia and job work promotion programs. I think with that, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen. I'm going to bring up a closing slide and just share a few final comments from the program team. So thanks again to our amazing presenters for sharing their perspectives and context. We have run out of time for today, though I can say there's a few more questions in the chat. I think it's a topic people are eager to talk about. But I think just in closing, just a sincere thank you to Curtis and Caleb. And the QR code on the screen is a quick QR snapshot for evaluating today's session so that we can improve the series in the future. We encourage you to just take a couple of moments to do that, and that link will also be posted in the portal. And I would certainly, just in closing, like to invite everyone. The next session in the series is scheduled for November 7th, where we will have an exciting and engaging topic, exploring prescribed burn associations. I know that's a topic that I am eager to listen into as my home state of Wisconsin is launching its first PBA this year, and there's a number of really great models throughout the region of really high-functioning, successful ones. So encourage you to review today's session and encourage you to consider attending one in the future and spread the word about the series. And with that, I think that is all I have, and I will hand it back over to Susan to either close out or share any final last words. But thank you everyone for attending, and hope you have a great week.